Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind, our 110th episode, where we talk about movies and TV shows and the like. Niles, how have you been since our last recording session?
I've been good. Life is good. There's lots of things in my personal life that I'm excited about coming up. Last weekend we had like a gender reveal for some uh, kiddos that are coming in the family, and we're all just so thrilled about that. That's going to be, yeah, it's just got us really excited, and so we're thinking about that a lot these days. So shout out to those people. They know who they are if they're listening. How have you been, Dylan?
Cool. Yeah, I've been all right. Definitely been a busy month or so. I got promoted, so that's exciting. But other
Yes.
than that, yeah. Other than that, though, nothing really super exciting in my world right now, other than the movies. One of which
Mm-hmm.
we are talking about right now, and that is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is the eighth and final film in the saga of Agent Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, and follows said team in a race against time to stop the AI known as the Entity from bringing an end to life as we know it. Written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, the film stars Tom Cruise, Haley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Palm Clementif, Isa Morales, Angela Bassett, and many, many more. Niles, what are your initial thoughts on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning?
This franchise, I feel like it always delivers on what it promises to be. Every Mission Impossible
Mm-hmm.
movie, it's like you know what you're buying when you pay for that ticket. You're buying a fun-filled spy
Mm-hmm.
thriller with lots of cool stunts, some action. Tom Cruise is going to be running and beating some guys up and shooting some guns, and you're going to have some fun. Yeah, just some fun general dynamics. And Final Reckoning, I don't this was no exception to that expectation. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're looking for in a movie, if you're looking for an action adventure thriller that's a lot of fun and is tense, this movie is perfect for you, and I think it absolutely delivers on that. However, I
Mm-hmm.
will say that I think this movie and a lot of the Mission Impossible movies, in my opinion, they kind of lack a little bit of nuance. Like, if you're looking for a movie with some emotional complexity, uh, character
Mm-hmm.
development or growth, or just kind of maybe more like socio political commentary or something with like something to say, like a movie with like a very powerful message, I don't think Final
Mm-hmm.
Reckoning's gonna do that for you. But I want to be clear. I did enjoy this movie. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time watching it. Um, but yeah, I just think in general it lacks a little bit of a compelling emotional hook, this emotional connection, and I don't feel like there's a lot of character development going on here. It's a lot of logistical
Okay.
action. It's like, we got to get here, we got to go here, we got to get this thing to stop
Mm-hmm.
this thing, and it needs to be precise, and we need to do this and this and this. So I feel like this movie just kind of lacks some of that development aspect, or like complex characters and things like that. Like, yeah, there's this
Mm-hmm.
kind of general theme to this movie that's really kind of about the choices we make, or like we're the amalgamation of every choice that we make along the road. And I think that is prevalent in this movie, but it does kind of lack some of that emotional stuff. But again, this is the eighth Mission Impossible movie, so like, how
Mm-hmm.
much more growth or development can you get, and do you want out of these characters at this point? But what
Yeah.
are what are some of your initial thoughts, Dylan?
Yeah, so I think in your description there, like you kind of highlight a difference in opinion between us because like you're not as much of a fan of Mission Impossible as
Mm-hmm.
I am, I would say. You enjoy them fine as movies. I'm a huge fan of this franchise. And
Definitely.
so for me, like these characters aren't overly complex people. They're not really meant to be,
Mm-hmm.
but this is also like the culmination of their 8 movie storyline for like Ethan and Luther. Obviously, none of the other characters have been around as long as they have in this franchise, but like it's like we've seen them go from kind of young agents to now veterans, kind of
Yeah.
just barely holding it together for this last run. So that's something I enjoy about it as a fan of the franchise. And I'll say I've seen this movie twice now, both in IMAX, which I would recommend if you're going to see it go to IMAX if you can. It's worth it. And I think I've landed on that I love it.
Mm,
I had some frustrations on my first viewing, but they mostly faded away when rewatching this on Sunday. However, there are a few structural decisions and a couple plot threads that feel kind of odd or not touched on enough to really feel satisfying. That being
mm-hmm.
said, like you alluded to, the action scenes alone are worth the price of admission, with the two standouts being an incredibly tense underwater sequence and the biplane chase that we see in the trailer. There's really no other franchise doing action like Mission Impossible, and Tom Cruise once again goes above and beyond in this department. He does all of his fucking insane stunts,
Mm-hmm.
which is part of how they're able to make those sequences as tense as they do. Um, One negative I do have is I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of the fun spy craft infiltration stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of light in this movie, but other than that, my complaints are pretty minimal. I will say the film benefits from multiple viewings as well. It's not my favorite Mission film. It's definitely not my favorite of the Macquarie run, but it's it has some all time series highs in the action department, and it works as a good send off for Ethan and his team.
Mm-hmm.
Any other non spoiler thoughts before we transition over?
I mean, I'll just kind of echo a lot of what you said, because yeah, I will definitely
Mm-hmm.
applaud Tom Cruise and everybody involved in this movie for it. Like, you can
Mm-hmm.
tell everybody who worked on this movie, the actors, the set designers, the costume department,
Mm-hmm.
all the stuntmen, obviously, like everybody involved really really cares about their craft, and they put their all into
Yeah.
it. And like, I don't know if I ever would feel confident enough to like jump from one plane to the other in midair. So that is like, I gotta give kudos to Tom Cruise for having the balls to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he puts his money where his
Yeah.
mouth is. But yeah, between the practical effects, set design, stunts, they really put in the hours to make this movie. So kudos to Cruise and everybody
Mm-hmm.
else involved. Like, this is kind of like one of those rare movies where like you can see the dedication to the craft. It really comes through, and
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, the stunts are like the main draw for everyone, I think, at this point, because they're just so
Right.
like death defying, but so cool. And I think I do have some logistical issues with the movies, or there's just like a
Uh-huh.
few things that like I would change about this movie. But like, also at the same time, a lot of my complaints don't matter at all, because you do need to you do need to suspend your disbelief a little bit when you go into these movies. It's,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's Mission Impossible, so it's supposed to feel very tense and real, but it's also like, you know, Ethan Hunt's been
Yeah.
through so many of these crazy adventures at this point that it's like, you just kind
Mm-hmm.
of gotta take it all with a grain of salt, and just,
Right.
roll with the punches.
Right, but I think what makes these work, and like the when the movies stretch the bounds of reality a little bit, and they do, um they get the benefit of the doubt from the audience more than other action movies like this. I would
Mm-hmm.
say because we know Tom Cruise is doing so much stunt work and actually doing a lot of this for real. And we may have even talked about this in the Dead Reckoning episode from a couple years ago, but it's like, even if he isn't doing every major action beat Ethan does, I don't know. He does enough of them, and we see the behind the scenes of him doing enough of them to where we're like, well, it seems impossible that he could do that, but it also seems like he really did it in real life. So what do I know?
Right.
So it extends your ability to suspend your disbelief because we know Tom Cruise is doing all this insane shit behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes.
And it's just fun.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's what summer movies are meant to be. It's what action movies are meant to be. It's like pure blockbuster cinema. This is what this type of film is supposed to execute upon, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah. It like I said, it delivers on exactly what you expect it to be. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what every movie should do. It should like follow through, and you should feel kind of satisfied by the ending and everything that you watched. Obviously, every movie's different. Like if you watch movie like Okja, you're not going to feel very happy at the end of it. But, you know, it's still a complete thought and they follow through and you see the
Uh-huh.
vision come to life. And it definitely screams here for Tom Cruise and the whole Mission Impossible team.
Yep. All right. You want to transition over into spoilers?
Yeah, let's get it going. Let's jump on into the
All right.
final reckoning.
Yeah. So one thing I heard from the early screenings, like before I saw it for myself on opening night, was that the beginning of the movie kind of drags, and
Mm,
it's like a lot of exposition dumping and lore dumping, and like tying it in with the rest of the franchise. It really picks up when he gets to the submarine, and I get that, but I don't really feel it as much.
mm,
I like all of these movies start with Ethan being given an assignment, your mission should you choose to accept it, in an analog way that self-destructs shortly after, which I always love. But I really
yeah.
felt the mission assignment it's this time from the president really emphasize like the massive journey we have gone on as the audience with these characters throughout the series. Like, it is in a lot of ways like a clip show for a little bit, but it's the final film in a 30-year franchise. I think a 30-year franchise that arguably has no bad movies. So I think they've
Yeah.
earned the ability to like kind of pat themselves on the back a little bit, and it had some weight to it because it's like, yeah, we've gone on all these adventures, and the world really does owe this guy kind of everything at
Yeah.
this point. Um, I will say, like, a criticism I have of the early part of the movie, in contrast to this criticism, is I thought some parts were a little rushed, like the embassy sequence at the beginning. In other mission films, like, this would be a part where like the team comes up with a plan to get into the embassy, and they're using the masks, they're using their tech. And in this one, we just kind of cut, and he's there. He's not in disguise either. He's just in there.
Yeah.
Not a huge deal, but it just felt a bit like, whoop, okay, we're just jumping along. It felt like Rogue One's pacing for a little bit at
Yeah.
that point.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning of Rogue One, where we're jumping from like place to place and we go to like 5 different locations in 25 minutes, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it felt like that.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
get that. Well, and I agree with you there because yeah, there's not a lot of like spy craft in this movie. It's like very
Mhm.
much like high stakes. It is literally a life or death situation, and fuck
Mhm.
spycraft. You need to get the fuck over there and save the world,
Yeah.
Ethan. But I will agree. Yeah, I didn't mind the start of the film, and like yeah, you've done so many good films, so many cool stunts. Why not create a small little clip show and put it in the front? And I think it
Mhm.
establishes the stakes. It establishes like, or reestablishes who Ethan is,
Mhm.
like why he
Right.
is like who he is, and like just getting a message from the president being like, you need to save the world again. Like that
Yeah.
is pretty like that establishes the stakes because like in previous movies it would just be like, oh, the CIA director, or like
The
Kittredge is like,
secretary.
yeah, the Secretary of
Yeah.
Defense, like someone's just like telling him like this is your mission. But when it's coming from the president, and it's
Mhm.
Angela Bassett as the president, that's
Yeah.
pretty powerful.
Yeah, because like the way it works in Mission Impossible lore is like the IMF answers to the secretary of the IMF, and then the IMF reports directly to the president of the United States. Like, no one else in the intelligence community knows about them.
Mm,
But I do like that her reaching out to him is like a last ditch effort, because he's just completely ignoring everybody else because he doesn't trust anyone to use the entity properly. Which, like, yeah,
it's
fair,
fair, very
especially
fair.
since this president is in Fallout as the director of the CIA. Angela Bassett is the director of the CIA, I guess, before Kittredge gets that job.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and but yeah, it really works. It just establishes the weight of where we are at this point in the series. I do love Grace's reintroduction in the embassy, where she pickpockets the walkie-talkies and the guns
yeah,
from the two dudes. It's a fun reunion. It also sets up the difference between a good pickpocket and a great pickpocket thing that's going to come into play later in the movie.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, the also some good comedic bits. The series is pretty funny, as well as being a good action spy franchise. Like we have early on, we get the Ethan. Uh, he takes the fake cyanide capsule
Oh
to make
yeah.
it look like he's dying, and which is great. And then he to save Grace, he just like murders the shit out of all of these people with all of this elaborate weaponry, but we don't see any of it. We just hear it and see his reaction
Yeah,
to
that was a
it.
pretty good
Which,
sequence. I like that a lot. It was like, oh, did they forget to film that? No, it's pretty great though. Share
no,
reactions.
yeah, it's like a Looney Tunes like bit, like the fight happening in the cloud or
Yeah,
something.
she's just kind of
Um,
recoiling like with every swing. Like, oh my god, it's getting
yeah,
worse.
and he's like, and then he's so confused. He's like, I would never have let them hurt you. And then he's like, and she's looking at the horrified at the pot. He's like, but they were gonna kill you. Like, no choice. Gabriel's death, which we'll talk about later, was also very funny.
Yes,
Opening night that got like a full theater laugh.
great.
The submarine crew is hilarious and
Hmm.
very horny. Um,
Yeah, they really are. That's a good bit. I love all of those
yeah.
characters. They're fun.
hmm Yeah, and we also have like I love the when he's hijacking the first plane he gets in. He climbs into the front cockpit and none of the controls are there anymore. Like they've all been moved to the back one. And
Yeah,
he has
he's
to
just like, fuck. Now I got to get in the
fuck.
back seat. Oh my
hmm
god, I just did this.
Yeah. That's one thing that these movies do really, really well in the action scenes. Like this is comedic, but also it builds tension. We see it in the submarine sequence as well. We saw it in Rogue Nation when he goes underwater. But it's like a series of escalating stakes in the sequence. Like things, he gets into a really complicated situation and then something additional goes wrong, which makes the complicated situation even more difficult to deal with.
Hmm.
And just great tension building throughout the whole franchise, but especially here.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
yeah, like the last film too, we get a couple biblical themes and tie-ins. Like in
Right?
Dead Reckoning, remember he's fighting against an omniscient AI that is almost like a god and is served by a man named Gabriel who is looking for a key, which is in the form of a cruciform.
Yeah.
This time the key is back, of course. The entity is referred to as an anti god. The mission also takes place over 3 days, and
Oh yeah.
Ethan is sort of reborn or brought back to life by Grace, and he's in like a little fetal position under the ice, like sort of like Christ rising again after 3 days. So,
Mm,
yeah,
those are very good observations. Actually, a lot of those went over my head a little bit. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, that's very good. I mean,
yeah,
it's surprising to me that comes up here. Um,
yeah. Um, but there are a couple weird things that keep the movie from being perfect. I would say one, the structural element for me. I don't know if you agree with this, but um, what they're inside a lot, which is one thing. We don't get a lot of like amazing vistas. We get a couple, and
yeah.
they're awesome. But they're like in a lot of like government buildings or underground for a large portion of the movie, which is kind of a shame. But also, Ethan is separated from the rest of the team for almost the entire movie. And I think we talked about this in our rewind on the sequels for the Rise of Skywalker or something else. But it's like for the final outing, it's like our last time with all these characters. It'd be nice to see them all get to interact a little bit more.
Mm, I get that. But yeah, like they've. Because I do go back and forth on that idea there. Because in the previous movies, you're right; they have been kind of together, and they coordinate the plan
Mm-hmm.
together, and then they execute it, and they're in constant communication. This one, there's like no communication because it's like we need to be all analog. We need to like really be
Mm-hmm.
careful, but this is how we're gonna do it, and it's I don't know. I think it works in this movie that it's like they're
Yeah.
all kind of separated. They're on their own little mission from Ethan, and he's doing his own thing because it's
Mm-hmm.
a very impossible mission. But I get what you're saying though. Like getting everyone back together, that would have been nice.
Yeah. And you're right. It does work, like, especially when he's on the aircraft carrier explaining the plan. And at the same time, Benji is explaining the plan to the rest of the team, and they both know it. So it's like
Hmm.
we're sharing the conversation at once. But the things, there are just a couple of things in the movie too that don't click as much as I would have liked them to. And one is just no elaboration on Gabriel and Ethan's past. In Dead Reckoning, we see a flashback to before the IMF days when Gabriel kills this woman, Marie, and Ethan is, I guess, framed for the murder, leading to him being given the choice, which is something that Dead Reckoning introduced to the franchise, where like every IMF agent is at one point or another like in dire straits and is given a choice between, you know, going to jail or dying or whatever, or joining the IMF and doing good. Um, but the film never touches on why this happened or why Gabriel did this. We see the flashback again, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't get any context for it. There was at one point the idea of an extended flashback sequence with Cruz, Morales, and Julia Roberts, de-age, play the Marie woman. Apparently, they thought when that scene would have been taking place was when Julia Roberts was like really popping off. So casting her as that character would be, you know, a nod to that. But Chris McQuarrie researched and realized that doing that de-aging would be, for three of them, would be as expensive as the entire submarine sequence. And also thought that also like thought back to when he's watching a movie with the de-aging and he's like, oh, that even when it looks really good, I'm looking at the de-aging and how impressive the tech is, and I'm not thinking about the scene. So they cut it. I don't entirely disagree with the reasoning here, but I do think something like that this ultimately does damage the dynamic between Ethan and Gabriel.
Yeah,
Because
I
yeah.
agree. I agree there because yeah, I think that like there is, like I mentioned at the top, there's a little bit of an emotional core that's missing from this movie. Like the stakes are there, everything's there for, you know, great movie. It's just like, yeah, we need something more that kind of connects us with Ethan, with that makes us angry at Gabriel, that we want to see him die, even though, you know, that was kind of established in the previous movie, so we don't need as much of that. But like, you know,
Yeah.
I think that I would have appreciated it if they kept something like that version of that scene that you just described in this movie, like in some capacity. I'm sure they could have found a way to do it with like without the de-aging tech in some capacity or minimal use or something. I'm not exactly sure how it is, but because you are right. Because I just rewatched Rogue One, and man, when Grand Moff Tarkin is on the screen, it's not as good as I remember it being. It's kind of
it's bad. It's
yeah,
it's really
it's
bad.
really bad, and it's like this is the whole time. Yeah, any scene that he's in, I'm just like focused on it, and I'm just like, whoa, why the whole time?
Yeah,
every time I'm just looking at it. So I totally get that using it would be weird.
Yeah,
and
but it's go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was just gonna kind of say that this movie's all action, like I've said before, and it doesn't have any time to really slow down for more character development, or doesn't try to as much. And so I think that without tying in that connection between Gabriel and Ethan, that's a missed opportunity. And like, it would have made like the whole climax of the movie even more impactful, where they're in like the biplanes, like fighting each other. It's like that. If we had like even just a little bit more context about their background, their history, and everything, like clearly Gabriel's kind of like got this like sinister, teasing nature with Ethan. Like he brings up Luther, when they reunite, and it's like, oh, that I bet that stings Ethan. Like, imagine if they had if we had an even better understanding of their background. I think that would have just elevated this movie just a little bit more.
Yeah, and that leads us into like another disappointing element for me. It's just the villains, starting with Gabriel, just like honestly just not as engaging this time around as he was in the last movie. I really liked him last time as kind of the human disciple of the entity, because like Ethan couldn't really interact with the entity as much, so it had a human face, and I liked him as that. And now he's an outcast, which is fun, I suppose, but it leaves him as a much more generic villain than before, because he just wants to control the technology to control the world and build his own new vision, right? And the aforementioned lack of background on his past with Ethan kind of exacerbates this, because that at least could have like fleshed out his motivations or something, or just like given him that dynamic that you were talking about between the two of them, where like we would have really hated him and wanted Ethan to beat him, as opposed to just him just kind of being like a generic baddie this time around.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, Gabriel was. He could have been more than what he was in this movie. I thought it was
Mm-hmm.
clever to have the entity kind of cast him aside, and he's no longer kind of this disciple. But yeah, he's
Mm-hmm.
also just kind of absent for the bulk of the film, and just kind of like you said, falls into that generic villain role.
Yeah. And similarly, like the entity itself just doesn't feel as scary to me this time around.
Mm,
Even though it's objectively causing larger scale harm than it did in Dead Reckoning. But I think this is a great example of why both show don't tell and bigger does not always mean better are like good lessons, right? Like
mm-hmm.
the entity is building complete nuclear Armageddon, but nothing in this movie that it does is as effective at building fear for it as an antagonist as the part in Dead Reckoning where it assumes Benji's voice
Mm,
and misdirects Ilsa in Venice. Like that is scary, and it plays up the like feeling of paranoia that kind of permeates that entire film, and it just doesn't have the same emotional impact at any point here for me.
yeah, I totally get that. That was a great scene in Dead Reckoning because it's like
Mm-hmm.
he gets led down this alleyway and then it's like, oh shit, these people are about to
Mm-hmm.
kill me. That was a great bit, and I totally agree because I think that's one of the things about this movie that I wish there was a little bit more of too. Is yeah,
Mm-hmm.
showing how menacing the entity is. Like we get one
Yep.
scene at the start of the movie where the president is, narrating, giving the spiel. It's like the entity is distorting
Mm-hmm.
facts and reality, and you see like pictures. It's like transforming cameras to guns in hands, and like you don't know what
Mm-hmm.
information to trust, right? So it is kind of relevant
Right.
today in a lot of ways, and it's fucking up society and whatnot. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like we needed some more scenes of that, just to, like show the true antagonistic force, or like something similar to what happened in Dead Reckoning, where like maybe the entity found a way to fuck with the comms of the submarine,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. I don't know because they all switched to like analog, but that I think that could have been
Right.
cool to include something similar to that scene.
Yeah, I will say the one exception to the critique we're making for me was when Ethan at the beginning like goes into the case and communes with the entity, and we see the vision of like the nukes going off around the world.
Mm,
Like it's very chilling, and I think the music here really carries a lot of weight because it's just like I think a lot of us probably have been become desensitized to like nuclear attacks in movies because they're so commonly done. But it's like you're kind of sitting there watching it like, oh my god, this is horrifying. And
yeah.
then Ethan stumbles and is like crying and asking his friends if they're real. And they're like, okay, that's really affecting, but we don't get anything like that after that point. The entity and Gabriel are largely off screen waiting for Ethan and Co to do the mission this
Hmm.
time around, which is kind of a shame. But
I get that. Yeah, and that was a cool scene too. I like the little chamber he got into.
mhm,
That's like love that. Love that. Want more of that. And I do like the
mhm,
concept of the entity in general. I think I mentioned this in our review of Dead Reckoning as well. Like I think it's really cool to have that be
mhm,
the big baddie of this these two movies, this arc here. And I like the
mhm,
idea of like how it's inspired this growing cult of followers who want to see the
mhm.
entity's plan come to fruition. Like that's kind of that's a cool element, and one that I wish that we saw just a little bit more in this movie. Like I know that they had those two characters, like one on the submarine and one in the presidential
Mhm.
situation room thing, who like infiltrated the government and the military and attempted to stop our protagonists. I kind of wanted to see more of these cultists in the movie. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
in what capacity. Like maybe they like the president's like, you need to expand your team, so I'm sending you like three more people to join your team, and they're like the best of the best, and like maybe one or two of them is
Mhm.
like, a cultist, and you could have had some internal dynamics on the team, which could have been
Mm-hmm.
a neat element to have. But you know, I'm happy with what we got overall. I just like this idea of this
Yeah.
cult.
Yeah, I do too, and I wish we'd seen more of the effects of the entity's like reign of terror, basically, than we do. Because, like we were talking about, the most of the movie takes place inside. We're not out in the world, like in civilization, a whole lot.
Yeah.
So it would have been kind of cool to see that martial law and people going crazy
Mm-hmm.
throughout, sort of feel the impact of what the entity is doing, but also just addressing a lot of the complaints we've made, like these ones, and then the ones about the lack of backstory for Gabriel and Ethan. We do have to remember this movie is 3 hours long already.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe there just wasn't time for it. And because I don't think there's much you could really cut out of here either.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I mean, I think the entire like submarine sequence where he's diving and getting to the submarine, I feel like that whole
mhm.
thing is probably like 20-25 minutes or something like that. It's a hell of a long sequence. So, yeah, what do you
Mhm.
cut out?
Yeah. I will also say we didn't have notes on it, but I liked the additions to the team this time around. I like that Degas and Paris from the last movie both
Yeah.
join up, and it's kind of cool that they're recruited from like opposite sides of that movie's conflict. Like
Yeah.
Degas was Briggs's right hand man hunting down Ethan, and then Paris was Gabriel's right hand woman, and they both are sort of drawn into Ethan's orbit, just because he's like the best guy that's ever been, and
Yeah.
kind of people to him who want to do the right thing. We also get the element of Briggs, Shea Wiggum's character, being the son of Jim Phelps, the John Voight's character and the villain of the first movie.
Right.
Also, Jim Phelps is the main character of the Mission Impossible TV show that is the original version of the series. So that's kind
Cool.
of a fun Easter egg, and sort of ties in with the like sum of all of our choices, and
Yeah. I get
come
that.
together, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose. But
Well, speaking of some of all choices, which I think
mhm.
that was Luther's line, or something like
Yes,
that. But
our lives are the sum of our choices. It's not like we're not defined by any one thing we do. It's
hmm
just like every put
yeah,
together.
and in this movie, he's back. He's part of the crew, but unfortunately, yeah, he passes away. Gabriel kills him,
Yeah.
in the first,
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of the first act, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
I got a question though. Was he sick at the end of Dead Reckoning, or did that develop between the two films?
I think it developed between the two films. I don't remember anything about it, and I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. I think it's probably just there to show that they're kind of getting old,
Yeah.
and maybe it was meant to like soften the blow of losing Luther at the beginning of this movie, because it's like he's already sick and kind of on his last leg anyway,
hmm
type of thing. Um,
Yeah.
because Luther is like Luther and Ethan are the only two team members left from the original movie.
Yeah.
Um,
You're
and
right.
Luther's been in all these.
Yeah, he really
So
has. Yeah, they picked up like Simon Pegg in like the third one or something like that. I can't
yeah,
remember.
Simon Pegg's a minor character in the third one,
hmm
and then I think everybody else who's stuck around is like 5 and later.
Yeah, right. I think so. Yeah, I mean, I like Luther as a character. And I won't say
hmm
I ever really connected with him on a super emotional level, so I wasn't super devastated by his death. But it was a little sad, and
hmm
I I always figured that at least one or two of the members of the original team, which are
Yeah.
Ethan and Luther here from the original team, or Benji. I figured one of those three or multiple of them were
hmm
gonna die in this movie. That was just kind of my assumption going in, and a part of me was like kind of wish that Ethan met his end in this movie too, and Benji was the only one left from the original
hmm
crew, because I think that would have marked a very definitive end. Like, he's not coming back. He's
Yeah.
in this franchise. But I'm also happy with what we got, even if I feel like
hmm
there was a part of me that was expecting that and wanted it. But then like I
Hmm.
was also thinking about it, I'm like, well, this isn't like James Bond where he needs to die at the end, you know. It's like this is a
Yeah.
fun movie. It doesn't need to be like kill off the protagonist.
Yeah, I think it would have worked fine. I think Luther's death works and the way they write it works here.
Definitely.
I like the idea of Luther being like, um, we're both on the right side of that gate, like um, and then I also enjoy because Ethan has like a pathological need to protect everyone on his team, and that I think a lot of people have said, and I agree, it ties back to the very first movie because the way that one starts is he loses his entire team in the opening mission. They
Yeah.
all die, and he's the only survivor. And ever since then, he's and Kittredge says the same thing to him. It's like that's the pattern. You refuse to sacrifice one life to save many. Like
Hmm.
he always finds a way to do both, which is kind of cool. But in this case, it's like you can't save Luther from cancer, and you can't save him from the bomb going off. And
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, and yeah, they've got a lot of good lines of dialogue in that bit. Like I think Luther even
mm-hmm.
said like like guys like us don't retire. And it's like that's so true.
Yeah.
I feel like Ethan to a certain degree is like addicted to this, to like the thrill of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah.
and he just wants to keep like doing it, but at the same time you're right. Like he's driven by this need to protect others. Um
Mm-hmm.
but it's a fitting end
Yeah.
for Luther.
It is. Yeah. It works. We also have the Rabbit's Foot. That's a tie-in to
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 3. So the Rabbit's Foot, I guess, was a computer virus, not a bioweapon, and the virus sort of develops eventually into the entity. So
Yeah,
kind of.
I was not expecting this tie-in, and I
Mm-hmm.
honestly was a lot happier that they brought it in for the story than I
Mm-hmm.
expected I would be. Um, having it be the precursor for the entity, I think that's a really cool addition to the story because it directly ties Ethan to the creation of this
Mm-hmm.
world-ending AI, which is fantastic. You know, like he helped create
Yeah.
it in a way by stealing it initially. So
Mm-hmm.
it ties the series together rather nicely. And I also like the tie-in because if I'm deciding which Mission Impossibles are my favorite, I think MI3 is definitely up there as I think one of my favorites of the franchise, probably
Okay.
my favorite. And I think it's
Mm.
specifically because of Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's fantastic in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of my favorite actors of all time. And
Yeah.
I think he just crushes in that film. I think he's like such a great villain. So I'm so glad that they
Mm-hmm.
created that connection, even if Philip Seymour Hoffman has nothing to do with this movie.
Yeah. No, for sure. But I think what it does really nicely as well is it ties back into what we were just talking about with Ethan's like refusal to sacrifice the one for the many. It's like he stole the rabbit's foot for Davian, I think, to save his wife, and like he wins in that movie, but on a larger scale, like now literally every human is at risk because he refused to sacrifice someone he cares about, and so now he has to like maintain his moral compass, but on a much higher scale than he's ever had to
Hmm.
before, and it makes everyone sort of justifiably question his judgment a little bit because it's like, okay, I appreciate that you always have my back as your teammate, but like, if you hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here, and here's not great.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, it's a good
but
addition.
yeah, it is. And then we also have another callback, which I think like works surprisingly well. William Donlow, who is the character from probably one of the most iconic scenes in the franchise,
Definitely.
and maybe in modern action cinema, the CIA Black Vault break-in scene, which is truly phenomenal. But Don Lowe is the guy, if you don't remember, they have to get he like watches the vault. So they have to put something in his coffee that makes him have like horrifying diarrhea. So he runs away and leaves and goes to the bathroom. He returns in this movie.
Yeah.
Kittredge sends to Alaska in 1996, and he's still there.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, and I'm a little conflicted on how I feel about it because I do think that I don't mind it overall having William
Mhm,
Dunlow back in this movie. I think it makes sense
mhm,
eventually for the story. Like his character is like over time, it's like, yeah, he's essential to the story. Like he's got um, the coordinates memorized
mhm.
for
Yep,
this thing where the ship went down, so Ethan can go get it, and they need that information. And then
yep.
he also helps defuse the bomb at the end, which is great. Like he's got stuff to do in this, and he was critical to the mission. Um, but I'm
Uh-huh.
also this also just there's a part of me that thinks this feels a little silly to have him be a character in this movie. Um, just
Mhm,
because it's like you were this one character from this scene in the first movie and we're bringing you back to this for this
mhm.
one part of the movie. From I don't know, I go back and forth on it because I'm like, I don't think that he adds a ton. Like his presence isn't super integral to the story, and I don't think he drives a ton of character growth or development. But like him and Ethan have this conversation on the plane about their history from MI1,
Mhm.
which is kind of nice, and I think that does kind of tie it
Yeah.
together a little bit. But I don't know. I go back and forth on it. It feels a little silly to me.
So I like that dynamic because like Ethan comes into that conversation thinking he owes him an apology, and then Donlo's like, no, like you did that, and I because you did that, like I'm much happier, and I met my wife, and my life, like I owe you everything,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was kind of nice. I, I honestly kind of disagree about him not adding anything to the story because
Sure.
I think like I liked him as a character. I thought he was really engaging. I also
Yeah.
like that Benji kind of fanboys out about him, and in so doing, completely reveals their identities because
Mm-hmm.
no one is supposed to know about what Donlo was doing.
Yeah.
But I think he ties into the idea of like the theme that Luther introduces about our lives being the sum of our choices. Like
Yeah.
we're only here because Ethan chose to steal the rabbit's foot to save his wife, but Donlo is also only here to help them because Ethan chose to break into the CIA Black Vault and
Mm-hmm.
sort of screwed this guy out of his job. And if Donlo wasn't here, who's going to think to like memorize those coordinates and think that's important? And so if that choice hadn't been made, their mission would be a dead end at this point, and they would never find the Sevastopol.
Sure.
So it's just kind of like, oh, everything we've done kind of comes back in ways we don't necessarily expect to affect us
Yeah.
down the road.
No, I like that. I do like that, and that's why I feel go back and forth on it because there's a part of me that's like, well, this feels
Mhm.
silly, but it makes sense for the story overall.
Yeah.
But then it leads right into one of the best sequences of the movie, which is the submarine
Hmm.
sequence, and it's all tied in with that island. And honestly, I think that is the best part of the movie. Like even just Ethan getting to the submarine in general from the
Hmm.
uh, carrier ship out in the ocean. It's just like
Yeah.
there's so many like big odds that they need to overcome for him to even get there. And then when he does, it's like, okay, now
Hmm.
the odds are getting even bigger and harder to do. And the whole sequence of events in the submarine itself is just so cool. Like it's the most tense
Uh
part
huh.
of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This is both like visually and audibly stunning, and it does such a great job of building tension. I think it's like an 8 minute long sequence underwater, and it's there's like one line of dialogue. I honestly think we could have done without the one line of dialogue where he just looks at it as like torpedo tubes. I'm like, we we know what you're getting at, but
Yeah.
it's truly breathtaking filmmaking. It's like the sound design obviously really adds to it, but visually it's amazing. You get those flares shooting out as he goes down, which
So
is really
cool.
cool. I like how they don't shy away from how dark it would really be that deep under the ocean. So it's kind of spooky. Also at the start, when he's leaving Bledsoe's submarine, Ethan literally opens the screen up into the IMAX aspect ratio as he's cranking the door open.
Wow, I didn't even notice that.
It widens with his turns. Like it stops when he stops turning the wheel. It's so fun.
Wow, I didn't notice that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's neat.
also like the escalation that the big ass submarine that Bledsoe's looking for ends up right behind them, which creates another complication for Ethan because he can't cleanly swim away from the sub and he almost gets caught in the propeller, which
Yeah, that
in
was good.
in both audiences, people I could feel were very stressed out watching that part.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, the stakes were real. It felt all
Mhm.
very real, and the suit that he's wearing is really cool too. I like that. And
Mhm.
I think yeah, this is one of those sequences where you do need to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Even though the sequence is a lot of
Mhm.
fun, it's very tense and it feels very real. Um, they talk a lot about in the sub going to the downed sub that he needs to get the code from and stuff.
Mhm.
They were talking a lot about like, oh, the deadly effects of atmospheric water pressure. Like you'll get the bends if you come up too quickly.
Mhm.
Like your lungs could collapse and you could just like collapse into entropy in general. Ethan
Mhm.
legitimately turns into a superhero in this sequence because it's like, oh
Uh-huh.
yeah, he's like underwater without his suit on for like 8 minutes, yeah, something like that, like a very long time after exiting
Mhm.
the torpedo tube.
Yeah.
Like I don't know a lot about atmospheric pressure and all that, but I don't care if they have a hyperbaric chamber ready for him on the surface that's going to help out with the pressure. Like that is not the same as the submarine's pressure thing. Like these are very different things, and like I'm of the opinion that Ethan would have imploded quicker than the Titan submersible. But again, I don't know a lot about this
Yeah.
stuff. And there's also this moment where he has to take off the entire suit, and then he's just literally swimming in Arctic waters, frigid,
Mhm.
super cold waters, in nothing but his underwear. Fuck, man. He does not die. You cannot kill Ethan Hunt.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, like on in your note, you included died of hypothermia, but it's like to be fair, the movie does also call out that hypothermia is the only thing that's gonna like keep him alive, right?
Right,
Because it's
yeah.
gonna slow his vitals down long enough for them to find him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I also really just enjoyed the way the submarine when once he's inside, the sequence kind of reminded me of like in video games when you have a water level
Yeah.
and a big part of it is like you have to change what level the water is at and then that changes what like obstacles and things you have to help you. This sequence kind of felt like that because like he
Yeah.
gets through the room at one level of water and then he comes back and the water level's different. Now he has to deal with all the torpedoes flying around
Mm-hmm.
and it just is a totally different experience. And then you also get the extra tension of the submarine, I guess, has been there since 2012, which is something that Dead Reckoning didn't really make very clear that it's been gone for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, but it's been just sitting on this ledge underwater for a really long time. But now, as soon as he's like opening the doors and shifting the weight of the water in the submarine around, it changes its like spot and it starts to shift, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like rolling towards a cliff
Yeah.
again with escalating the problem and making it more and more complicated. And then he gets out of the submarine just in time, but his like cord gets caught on the
Yeah, that's
the
right.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
which like yeah, that is the part where I'm like, oh yeah, he would implode
Yeah,
when
he,
he's
he
being
would
like
die
pulled
very
down so
quickly.
fast. But whatever. Before the submarine dive spot though, I really love the crew of the submarine that picks him up. We get Trammell Tillman from
Mm-hmm.
Severance and Katie O'Brien from Love Lies Bleeding. I love all of this like cast of people. They're so odd
Yeah.
and
They're
they're like, you
fun.
must be Captain Bledsoe. He's like, you must be out of your damn mind.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what exactly was the plan if we didn't pick you up? And he's like, I didn't think that far ahead.
Yeah,
It's
it's such a
great.
great little bunch, and all the shit that they do on there is so great. They got great dynamics down there in the depths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you want to talk about the biplane sequence and the climax in the
Yeah,
movie for a little bit?
I mean, this is a great climax, in the whole biplane, all the stunts, everything there is
Mm-hmm.
just phenomenal. Like, it's so cool, it's so tense. I love everything about the biplane stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. I love it too. I think it's incredible. I also love the parallel action climax that's happening because it's like, in classic Mission Impossible fashion, they have to in separate places like time their actions perfectly and
Hmm.
just be ready for the other person to execute on this other thing. And I love how Ethan elevates Benji to team leader a couple times in this movie. And at the end here, Benji gets shot. And I love that as team leader, he knows he has to hide his injury from Ethan to get him to go chase Gabriel. Otherwise, Ethan will worry too much about him and will fail. And it's
Hmm.
just like, it's not dwelled upon in great detail, but it really shows Benji stepping up in that moment as a team leader and like kind of knowing what everybody on his team needs.
Hmm.
And then we also get that great sequence of where Paris has to operate on Benji, even though she does not have medical experience, while Grace is doing all the computer stuff. And Benji is having to instruct both of them on how to do all of that. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that was a good sequence. I was expecting him to like
Mm-hmm.
mix up the instructions for them at one point. Like, you need to stick this into the computer, or it's like, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I don't know. But yeah, that was a
Yeah.
really good sequence of events. And man, those stunts on the biplanes though, they're, oh my
Oh my
god.
God.
Have we said they're fucking
Yeah.
cool already? Because they're pretty fucking
Yeah,
cool.
it's there's not even much to say because it's just like so thoroughly impressive. And it's so well shot too. Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you can see behind the scenes, like when he's jumping from the red plane to the yellow plane, he was jumping from the red plane to like the helicopter where they were filming in the behind the scenes video.
Oh, okay.
Um, and Chris McQuarrie talked about several times, I think, like the actual once they were actually in the air with the planes, it was super dangerous, obviously, but the real danger apparently was taking off and landing, making sure that no debris on the runway hit Tom Cruise, because they
Ooh.
were like, yeah, like if something hit him, it's like him being shot,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and then you gotta pause production, or forever maybe.
Pause. Yeah. Also, Gabriel's death is so.
So great, so unexpectedly hilarious.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. He
laughed
just
so
like
hard at that for like a moment. Oh, it's so good.
oh, it's great. Yeah, he like crushes his dick on the thing on the tail of the plane, and then his body flips over. It splits his head in half,
Oh my
and he's
god.
so such a like he's so smug. He's like, only one of us has a parachute,
Yeah,
and he dies.
totally gets his comeuppance right then and there. It's so great.
It's so perfect. Um, and then we get they succeed. They have Grace has the blink of an eye between when the entity enters the 5-dimensional drive to when it can take over and launch all the nukes. And she's a great pickpocket, so she executes it perfectly, which is, I don't know, the build up and execution of that scene was great. I think they nailed it. I also like Luther's final monologue to Ethan. I think it ties everything
Yeah.
together really nicely. And then his reconciliation with Briggs slash Jim Phelps was nice as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah.
Um,
Good ending.
I like that Kittredge remains annoyed with him at the end.
Yeah, I get it. Um,
Yeah.
well,
And oh,
oh,
go
I
for
was
it.
just gonna say, final question. The final question of this movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is this the end for the franchise, for the Mission Impossible franchise?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I think, and I'll tie in my other point with this answer. I think yes, at least the saga of Ethan Hunt. I am choosing to believe the final shot of the movie. We have all of them like kind of like nodding to each other and like We did it. Yay. Grace gives Ethan the captured entity, and he walks off away from camera, and he is slightly left of center in the frame. And there's a woman walking away in the same direction as him. I am huffing on copium and deciding that I'm just going to believe this is Ilsa, even though we did see her stabbed in the heart in the last movie. Her hair looks like Ilsa, she dresses like Ilsa, and she walks like Ilsa, so she can be Ilsa in my mind. And I think that works for me. Also, just having just rewatched Dead Reckoning, Gabriel said, either Ilsa or Grace will die tonight, and I will get off that train with the key. And then it looks like Ilsa died in Dead Reckoning, but Gabriel doesn't get the key. He gets kicked
Ooh,
off the train without the key.
good
So
point.
there, I know I'm kind of, you know,
I get
grasping
it.
at straws, but I think this is a good way to end it. It's been going for 30 years. Tom Cruise is in his 60s now. He physically will not be able to do the type of stuff he is doing for much longer. And also, the stakes of this movie are that the entire world will get nuked, wiping out all of humanity. I don't
Hmm.
think it's a good idea to attempt to top that. So just,
Yeah,
right off the sunset. What about you? What do you think?
I get that. I do kind of want this to be the end for the franchise overall. I think at the bare minimum,
Mm-hmm.
this is a fitting end for Ethan Hunt and a good opportunity for Tom Cruise to make his exit if he would like to. Like
Yeah.
you don't like they can continue this franchise, and I feel like studios will want to because these
Mm-hmm.
movies they I mean, I was looking more at pre-pandemic levels, but like these movies, like they make bank at the box office every
Yeah.
time. Like Fallout,
Except for the last one.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like Dead Reckoning did not do so well. It more or less broke even, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
more just because of like the pandemic and everything. That's my read on it.
Yeah.
But like
Well, it's a
Fallout,
couple things.
but like yeah,
Oh,
like
go ahead.
but
Yeah.
like Fallout, for instance, it raked in over $790 million worldwide,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like off of
Yeah.
a like $178 billion budget. So it really made
Mm-hmm.
some fucking money. So
Yeah.
I think that they'll want to keep
Right.
making these movies just for that reason.
That's a fair point. And with Dead Reckoning, it's always important to call out the reason that movie didn't do well financially is one, it was COVID related. They had to shut down production multiple times due to COVID restrictions for extended periods of time, but they paid everybody. The
Mm-hmm.
entire cast and crew paid them the entire time they were shut down, which is why the budget of that movie got so inflated. And then also, on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, Barbenheimer happened like
Right.
2 weeks after or the weekend after. So it just got totally, cut out at the knees by that big cinematic event.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you're right. They do make a lot of money, but also, would they continue to make a lot of money if they don't have that appeal of Tom Cruise and his stunt work as
Yeah,
part of the
that
marketing?
I think yeah, that is like the $1 million question. Like you'd need to like replace him with someone who's like as invested in the stunt work. Like I know that
Mm-hmm.
Haley Atwell, she did some pretty cool stunts in this movie. Like I read like a trivia fact that she was like 8 months
Mm-hmm.
pregnant when she was like doing one of her fight scenes, and it's just like, holy
Oh my
shit, that
god.
is some dedication. Like if you can
Yeah.
do that, I think that you could come back and lead if you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to, or maybe get someone like Glenn Powell or someone else to come back and be a
Or
to,
Palm Clementif, who
yeah,
was in
yeah,
this
yeah,
one.
yeah. Bring someone like that, or at
Mm-hmm.
least like I could see um a possibility for a next movie where it's like they're introducing his successor in the film, and Tom Cruise kind of has a lesser role. He's more of like a mentor, and he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of steering the ship, but he's like,
Yeah.
I'm too old for this shit, like you take over and you go do the stunts now. And but I think if they
Mm-hmm.
did continue the franchise, to your point about nuclear Armageddon, like this
Mm-hmm.
next film, if they did one, it needs to be a return to basics spy thriller, like
Yeah.
very like
Mm-hmm.
street level. Like it's not going to end the world, but it's a pretty big mission,
Mm-hmm.
and it still carries a lot of significance. But it's not life or death for every nation on Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it would be fun if they do continue it to have like Ethan Hunt be the secretary of the IMF or something, like he's the main boss now or something. But I think the right move would be to end it here. It feels like an
Same.
ending. Felt a little abrupt the first time I watched it, but it worked for me the second time. It was just like, because you typically would want like all your characters are like saying their goodbyes or whatever, but this kind of feels right for their type of goodbye. They're spies. They
Hmm.
they smile, nod their farewells, and then they fade into the shadows. And I just love the oath they take to. It's just like we live and die in the shadows for those we hold close and for those we never meet. It's
Mm-hmm.
cool.
I love that.
It's like we'll do everything we can for people who will never know our name and will
Hmm.
never ask for anything. Any final thoughts on The Final Reckoning?
I think I gave all my final thoughts.
Yeah.
But it's a fun movie. I'd recommend it if you have not seen it already.
All right. Well, with that, let's transition into some other stuff. Niles, what have you been watching, reading, playing, whatever recently?
So, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, just coming off the high from Andor, I was like, I gotta go and watch Rogue One, see how that stacks up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm more positive on it this time than I was the first time I saw it. A lot more positive. It definitely,
Mm-hmm.
with the context of Andor, it changes a lot of things, and it's just like, man, Saw Gerrera is just high on Redonium this whole movie until he dies. Like he's just high the whole time, but it was a good
Uh-huh.
movie overall. There's, but yeah, like I was saying with Grand Moff Tarkin, that shit is like, uh, I don't love that part.
Yeah.
I don't like that part. The Leia stuff is a little bit more digestible because it's so like just one scene and done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the side one's a little bit better, but
Yeah.
it's a fun rewatch. I would definitely recommend it for people after you watch Andor.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see it recontextualize the fight. Um, I also don't remember if I mentioned this in one of our few last episodes, but I watched Raising Arizona recently. That was one of the
Mm-hmm.
movies that I watched. A lot of fun. Good Nick Cage movie.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'd never seen it before. A lot funnier than I was expecting it to be. Um, and last thing for me, if you listen to the series, you know that I watched RuPaul's Drag Race, and
Mm-hmm.
they've come back for an All Stars season again, season
Okay.
10. So Dylan, I think I've explained it to you before, but it's they take queens from previous seasons who they really like, and they bring them
Mm-hmm.
back for an All Stars season, and they just kind of stick
Right.
around for the whole time, and it's a lot of fun because they're all seasoned queens. They're great. They've done the show before.
Mm-hmm.
This season is interesting though because it's a bracket type this time. So
Okay.
for like the first 3 episodes, it's like 6 queens, narrowing it down to 3, and then repeat and then repeat. So you have 3 separate brackets, and then they all merge into like this final bracket of like all those
Mm-hmm.
queens who succeeded, and it's like they've never done anything like that before. I'm enjoying
That's
it.
cool.
You get like kind of a lot more queens in one season, and God, there are some bitches. It's a lot of drama and fun. um,
Yeah.
what about you? What have you been up to?
So I finished a rewatch of Andor season 2. I felt compelled to watch it all again, just with the context of the full season. It's so phenomenal. Go check out our episode on it if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
And like you, I went in to watch Rogue One straight after. I like finished my Andor rewatch. I'm like, all right, Rogue One. I started it too late, so I haven't finished the movie. I need to go back and watch like, the last 2/3. But yeah, I don't love Rogue One, but I agree. It's like recontextualized and enhanced by Andor in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And I the I think of Rogue One, maybe I mentioned this in our Andor episode, I can't remember, but like Rogue One feels like a prototype of what Andor eventually became. Like you can kind of see the seeds of those ideas in that movie, but it's still a little too steeped in original trilogy nostalgia and tying in with the Force and all that stuff. it doesn't quite nail the vibe and or eventually delivers on. But it was the first attempt at it, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
exactly.
one step in that direction. I agree with you on Tarkin though. Like I think Red Letter Media in their review way back in the day said like it's so perfect at the beginning because you just see his reflection in the window and it's like, oh, that's tasteful and cool. And it's
Hmm.
like, and it plays character like he won't even dignify Krennic enough to turn around and speak to him. He's just looking at him through the reflection, and then he turns around. And it's like, rah!
Yeah, it's like, oh
It's a
god,
monster.
no, turn back around.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'll finish that at some point. I also started watching I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson,
I
and
love that show.
it's so funny. I've seen clips of like I've seen some of the sketches online before because they're so popular, and but
Hmm.
the so many memes that come from that show that I'm like finally seeing the full context of like the like you sure about that? You sure about that? I've seen that as a reaction image on Twitter for like years.
Hmm. I'm not worried about it.
And then
I'm
the
not
I
worried
did
about any of it.
yeah. I didn't do fucking shit.
I love that show. It's so funny.
It's so good. I'm gonna keep watching. I'll probably watch more after I edit the episode tonight. But and then obviously the like we're all trying to find the guy who did this sketch is one that I've seen for
I love
so
that one.
long.
I think my favorite
Yeah.
one is probably, yeah, either the Corncob TV one or, oh, the what is it? The Baby of the Year competition. That one's hysterical.
It was so funny.
Fuck you, Harley Jarvis.
Well, and then there's the other one where the guy like he's like entertaining for a corporate retreat or something, and he brings out it's like the Buff Little Boys competition. Where's the CEO? You come up, pick the winner of the Buff Little Boys competition. And he's like, I don't want to do that.
So come on, dude, pick one.
It's great. It's great. I've also been continuing to read Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. It's the book I was reading about like sort of looking at social trends or diseases and fashion trends and stuff like that as like pandemics and looking at the different types of people that are required to like make something flood into the mainstream.
Hmm.
Like you have to have people who have like the right kind of charisma to really sell you on something, and then you also have to have the right kind of person who has the vast network who can recommend something to all these different types of people and stuff like that. And one of the examples in the book is like Paul Revere's ride, warning that the British were coming. Right,
Hmm.
Paul Revere rallied like all the people up through Lexington and Concord who were ready to fight the next morning. And then there was another guy whose name I'm blanking on who also did a similar ride down a different path. And like fucking nobody he talked to did anything. So the guy is like looking at like what was it about Paul Revere that made his mission so successful when this other guy was not as successful. It's like what about their
Hmm.
personality and their connections caused Revere's ride to be a pandemic of action that led to the American Revolution, and it's pretty interesting. I'm enjoying it, and he talks about like all these different types of people, like a guy who just has like hundreds of acquaintances, like people he knows all over the country, and he can connect you with them. It's like oh, you're looking for this. It's like oh, I know a guy who does that in this town. It's like you should meet up. Here's this number, and then that connects you. It talks about 6 degrees of separation as well, like the
Hmm.
study done that led to that concept, which is very interesting. Yeah, cool book overall. I'm enjoying it.
That's neat.
But yeah, that is gonna do it for us this week. Let me put down the time code. Happy Pride, by the way,
Yeah.
guys. It's Pride Month, so um, you know, have a great month to all our LGBTQIA plus friends out there. It's kind of a scary time for these marginalized communities in America, so do your part to, you know, keep everybody safe and enjoy Pride. But yeah,
absolutely.
where can people find you online until our next episode?
You can find me on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. What about you, Dylan? Where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies. You can find both of us here at Play Pause Rewind on YouTube and your podcast platform of choice, as well as our second channel, Play Pause Rewind Videos. We'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about something. We'll see you guys then.
Something else, but thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.